Hello and welcome to a very special Christmas royal wedding bonanza. So pop the champagne. This is the royalty. I'm Sarah Hewson. Welcome to the finale of our royalty Christmas specials as we watch 3 unforgettable royal weddings spanning nearly 40 years. Joining me today, we've got some of your royalty favourites, Arthur Edwards and Emily Andrews, Rupert Bell and Christine Ross. And joining me, Afua Hagan. We finish with the wedding of Prince Charles and Princess Diana. Let me take you back to the 29th of July, 1981. Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. The specials were #1 with Ghost Town, but it was the heir apparent lifting the nation's spirits as he married Lady Diana Spencer. 1981 at St Paul's Cathedral, 29th of July, 1981. Where were you, Afua?
I was in my mother's womb at that
Not
time.
even born yet.
I was not born. So I can't say that I remember it firsthand, but I mean, my mum is still probably the biggest Diana Princess of Wales fan ever. So I've seen this quite a few times. She's watched it on repeat.
I mean, I was 3, so I don't remember it, but I feel like I remember it because, as you say, the images of it, everyone waving their flags.
Yeah.
I don't know whether you've watched it, but have you watched this?
I have, yeah, of course.
Well,
who hasn't?
well, I watched it live, which puts me in a unique category, but it was a very special day in what was a very strange time for Britain as a whole.
I think William's wedding had more viewers because more people had televisions.
They did.
Yeah, but I mean, it was huge.
750 million people in 74 countries tuned in to watch. I've got my notes on. It was referred to as the wedding of the century, but apparently it wasn't the first one to be broadcast live. That was Princess Margaret marrying Tony.
I think the Queen's was Queen. No, the Queen's wasn't. No, the Queen got married in 47. No, that's right.
It wasn't broadcast live.
Nobody had. No, it wasn't. No one had televisions.
No, exactly.
No, you're right. Yeah.
All of the build-up to the wedding. I mean, this was the big fairy tale, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It was billed as, you know, the wedding of the century. It was like a real life royal love story. You know, the prince and the princess, everybody was like, this is it.
I was, for this wedding, in the British Army. I had done my tour of Northern Ireland. I was serving in Germany at the time, in the Grenadier Guards, but the whole backdrop to this wedding in July, end of July, we had the country was 2 years into the Thatcher era, and it was a whole change. There was a lot going on behind the scenes. It was a pretty grim time, you know, as we tried to evolve, and with Thatcher trying to do her thing, not everyone would agree what was going on, but then you had this wedding that took centre stage. There was one other good thing that happened that year. We won the Ashes, Botham's Ashes series, which defined his career, but that probably means nothing to you. That's cricket, okay? So I can tell you, the social backdrop, it was a very interesting time, and I remember watching it on BFBS television in Munster at the Oxford Barracks. But before we start watching it, let's see if we've got a butler. Have they run to a butler for us?
There's no butler today, Rupert.
I'll have to pour my own wine then. So before we watch it, because this is what we did in the officers' mess, I at least had someone to pour me wine then, because we had rows of servants.
You can't get the good help
but you
today.
just can't get the staff these days. Anyway, so here we go. Settle down.
And then we just got a glimpse there of Prince Charles with his brother Andrew heading to St Paul's and waving to the crowds. But what must he have been feeling? Because we know a bit more now, don't we? It's been suggested that actually he cried the night before the wedding. Such were his nerves and his feeling of, am I doing the right thing?
The right thing. And, you know, Princess Diana talked about afterwards, you know, the night before the wedding, she almost called it off, didn't she? Because she heard a phone call, or there was communication between Charles and Camilla, and it was our sisters, that persuaded her to carry on with the big day, carry on with the wedding. I mean, can you imagine them calling that off the night before?
How that would have changed the path of history.
I mean, absolutely.
And you mentioned Diana's sisters there, because actually that's how she met Charles, isn't it? Because he was going out with her sister Sarah.
And I think a lot of people don't really know that.
Yeah.
That he was dating the older sister, and then saw Diana and thought, maybe I'll have that one.
Yeah, went for a stay at Althorpe
For a
House,
wife
the Spencer
instead.
family residence, and then
like
met
you.
Diana. She was 16 years old.
Yeah.
And she's said to have told her friends at the time that I've met the man I'm going to marry, and this is the only man in the world who can't divorce me. Famous last words, of course.
Didn't quite pan out that way, did it?
I don't remember any other wedding being so exciting, for me personally anyway.
Well, it was kind of like the fairy tale, wasn't
Yeah, it was,
This
yeah.
young,
It was,
beautiful
yeah.
nursery teacher.
Yeah.
Yes, a member of the aristocracy, but she was very young, didn't know anything about, no one knew anything about her until you got that picture with her supporting him at polo.
Yeah.
And then suddenly this fairy tale, whirlwind romance, they're married within a year, they'd only had 20, 25 dates. Yeah. And here was this dashing young prince, heir to the throne, marrying his beautiful princess. So it kind of was that fairy tale that we tell our kids, don't we?
Yeah.
And everyone wanted to be a part of it and to buy into it.
And there were 3 carriage processions heading towards St Paul's simultaneously.
And they picked St Paul's Cathedral, didn't they, rather than Westminster Abbey, because it would be a longer procession. It would be more opportunity for people to be able to see them through the streets of London, and you had literally millions of people turn out to wish them well, and that's why they picked St Paul's, also because it was a bigger church, so it would have a longer train.
3,500 people inside St Paul's Cathedral for the wedding, and of course all of those hundreds of thousands out on the streets of London watching that procession.
So I chose to go to St Paul's because I figured, it'd be about the dress. Big mistake, because the picture, first time ever, the royal couple kissed on the balcony. It was only almost a perfunctory kiss, but it was a kiss on the lips. And
for people who won't know, you had to choose your position in advance,
yeah,
didn't
oh
you?
yeah, you have.
You couldn't just on the day suddenly think, right, well, I've done the wedding and then I'll go outside Buckingham Palace.
It is amazing how differently this is presented. Everyone in the royal family is arriving in a horse-drawn carriage. There's not sort of these really modern, sleek cars pulling up outside St Paul's Cathedral.
You had the 3 carriage processions. You've got the Queen's procession that we're looking at now. Then you've got Charles, who comes in the carriage with his brother, Prince Andrew, who was one of his 2 supporters, as they called it. Didn't call them best men. But he had his 2 brothers, Andrew and Edward, as his supporters. And then the main carriage procession, Diana.
No, I don't think the weather was particularly good. It was a typical sort of English summer's day. But again, that scene coming down the Mall is just...
I mean, it's iconic. What's amazing is this could be several events. It could be trooping, but you know it's Britain. You know it's the British royal family. Gosh, it does look, London does look a bit different, doesn't it?
Well, you know why you can see the sand on the streets?
Yes.
There? That's to stop the carriages slipping.
Oh,
That's why they put sand on there, because the horses and everything, because on the tarmac.
Oh, that's
so
the
reason.
interesting.
And you would have noticed it at the coronation and everything, that even at the state opening, they put that sand down to stop the carriages slipping.
Oh, that's incredible. Who knew? Well, to Diana's dress, which I think
may have had a
we'll
glass
see.
of wine, but the memory's still there.
I don't think we're going to be able to...
That's Harold Macmillan. That's who
I
that
was just going to say, I don't know if I'll be able to identify these
that's
people.
The former Prime Minister. Now, that is Nancy Reagan. You should know her.
Mm-hmm.
What?
She looks lovely.
In this cramped carriage with your dad, I wonder what they were saying to each other.
Oh, I mean, the nerves that they must feel. Of
Off
course,
the chain.
in Diana, we didn't have a commoner marrying into the royal family. She was already part of the aristocracy. Her father, Earl Spencer, already knew the royal family very well.
So much so that, she was wearing a tiara that's actually, in her family already.
Yes.
That was part of her borrowed. So, the old new borrowed blue tradition, she had a borrowed tiara from her family.
We're just watching the Queen and
There she
the
is.
Duke of Edinburgh get out. What I loved is the Queen had a blanket over her knees. in
Was it
the
cold?
carriage to keep her warm
keep her
on
dignity.
that day, and just sort of shed the blanket onto the floor as they then head up those incredible steps into St Paul's Cathedral.
Amazing.
Queen, the Duke of Edinburgh.
Yeah, oh yeah.
What do we think of her hat?
I think anything the Queen wore was great. I mean, we used to have bets on what the colour the Queen would be wearing. I never won the
It was
bet
great.
once.
No, I never won the
Never
bet
won
once
the bet
either.
once. No, no.
No.
Ceremonial
Oh,
occasions.
Queen
Yeah.
Mum. And there's Prince Edward.
Yeah, yeah.
Looking very youthful.
When he had hair.
When he
yeah.
had hair.
And Princess Margaret heading
Everyone
in
looks
their
so
carriage.
young.
They are
They
so young.
really look so young.
And the early 80s fashion look
Yeah.
there.
And this was the peak of fashion. I
Yeah.
mean, this was the ultimate of celebrities coming out for this day. Everybody was looking at what everybody was wearing. And like you said, you know, this huge carriage procession. So people really got to, you know, see. Lucky it didn't rain.
Here we see Diana, Lady Diana Spencer, that first glimpse of her, and she's just a cream puff. All you can see is a puff of white fabric.
Honestly, that doesn't sound very flattering.
What, the cream puff?
She's just a cream puff.
Well, I think she described it that way herself.
Well, look how you can
And
see
the
how.
whole carriage is just stuffed with this gown.
Prince Charles there with Prince Andrew also arriving in their military uniform
Yeah.
as well. I think is Charles wearing the uniform of the Admiral of the Fleet?
I believe so, and that he has, I think his sword is made of Welsh gold, I believe, as were their wedding rings. A royal tradition that the wedding rings are made from Welsh gold.
Yes, because when I was reading about Meghan's wedding, her ring was made from the same piece of Welsh gold, but there's not very much of it left
yeah.
now.
But this, yes, I think this was a real high point for the British royal family in terms
And look
of
how innocent she looks.
absolutely beautiful. It's angelic, cherubic. Yeah.
You think if you were 20
No.
and you were doing this, 18, you were still in, and you think you'd found your prince,
Yes.
and you'd met him 13 times, so they say, and next minute you're walking up the aisle in front of a worldwide audience,
I just
where
can't.
before social media and everything, this would have been watched by everybody.
It is incredible to think about. Again, a very present moment though. There's no live streams, there's no tweets, you're not taking pictures on your phone for your family.
No one's doing this.
Yes, it was a moment that really brought people together though.
There were
Everyone
only, in this
tuned
country,
in.
there were only 3 TV stations.
Yes, I've heard this scary rumour.
Well, it wasn't a scare, I can tell you, it was fact.
I think now there does tend to be, there's a tendency to look at her entire marriage as Charles as full of acrimony and mistrust, but she was happy at the beginning.
Let me
Is
tell
that
you,
fair to say?
I can't tell you how much they were. I don't believe all that about he never loved Diana. I was there I did the whole thing from the moment I first photographed her till the day when I was in Paris when the coffin came out. I spent 17 years photographing that woman, and I know that early days they were very much in love. We did this tour of Australia, I think Australia and New Zealand, 5 and nearly 6 weeks, and they couldn't keep their hands off each other, you know.
Lady
Here she
Diana,
is.
was there. Oh, doesn't Dad actually look like he's slammed up against the door? He looks uncomfy.
I mean, there's not much room for anyone else.
Not much room.
in
And
that.
actually, you can just see how much of the dress takes up the front of the carriage there. 25-foot train.
Yeah, so this
Full
was
of
made by
smoky.
David and Elizabeth Emmanuel,
yeah.
wasn't it? And it was reported beforehand that they were going to make the dress, but their one job was to keep this dress secret.
Yeah.
And so they'd hired these 2 security guards, Jim and Bert,
Imagine
who
that
were in
was your
charge of guarding the dress, and it had its own safe that it went into at night.
So good.
And they even put rogue coloured threads into the bins because, you know, journalists were hunting through the bins
Yeah.
outside their studio trying to get a clue of what this dress might be. And I hadn't realised there was actually a second dress,
Just in case.
just in case.
Just in case
Just in
something
case
happened.
this one leaked and got the details of it were out there first.
And speaking of leaks, actually, on the morning when Princess Diana was in the dress, no one knew what it was all fine, she spilled perfume on the dress. And she covered that bit up with her hand, so you don't actually see it throughout the ceremony. But she has a funny hand placement. That's because she
you
spilled
do
perfume
see her
on the...
holding the dress quite a lot, lifting it. And as I was watching it, thinking, God, aren't you going to crease the dress? What are
She's
you doing?
covering up the perfume stains. And
with the eyes of the world upon you.
Yeah.
Of all
That's
the
the kind of
days.
thing that I would do.
It's the sort of thing I'd do.
Yeah,
as
I'd
well.
like put my wedding dress on, then like have a bacon sandwich with ketchup and all down the dress. You know what I mean?
It's funny, this picture we're seeing now. I mean, the coach was too small for the dress.
The dress.
Yeah.
The dress,
The dress was
huge,
so
wasn't
creased
it?
when she got out.
I know.
Yeah, I
And they
know.
hadn't, you put all this planning, the Emmanuels put all this planning into the dress, and then they must have been besotted themselves when they saw the TV pictures.
And of course, you know, what people don't know, there's a team of seamstresses there waiting inside the St Paul's, ready. If there was any adjustments to that dress to be made, they would have quickly done it. Yeah. So when they were straightening the dress out, it looked so creased, but that gave it a lovely effect, I thought.
It was this, and there she is. She's about to. Oh no, Dad's getting out.
Her dad's getting out,
come
and
on,
then
Dad.
we've got to get the dress.
Yeah,
Should we have a drink while we're?
waiting for that 25-foot train to come out there.
Oh, here she
there
comes.
she is.
I mean, that was the first glimpse that we got.
I just want to
of
steam it.
this
I want to
dress.
get a steamer and run up and just steam the whole thing.
Yeah. Ivory taffeta, puff sleeves, and as
Yeah.
you say, this 25-foot
train.
train. And I mean, it needed to be a dress of that stature, didn't it? Given
Absolutely.
the enormity of this day and the venue that they were
Yeah.
getting married in. But can you imagine the weight of it as you're
Well, this
heading
is the
up
thing,
those
because it had
steps?
all that taffeta underneath to give it that shape. She had a 25-foot train. She had that huge veil as well. Wow.
Look at it there.
She probably had a headache.
That's her father waving to the crowds
Yeah.
outside, and the bridesmaids following on, carrying that train. What a responsibility for them.
But what an incredible shot that was as well.
Yeah, absolutely spectacular.
This was such a big deal for
This
the
was
country.
huge. I mean, it really was. Even still, even when I was growing up, it was such an iconic moment. The dress and the wedding and the pomp and ceremony and just the fairy tale aspect of it. I think her being so young at the time added to that fairy tale element.
Look at that train. Yeah, that was the
Wow.
longest train ever.
Wow.
That's why, you know, I really thought I had a great picture, and then of course she kissed him on the balcony, and I was wiped off the front. Yeah.
Well, you never really know, do you? It
No.
just shows that you can do mountains and mountains of prep,
Yeah.
and then a moment
Yeah.
can just change the course of
Made the
history.
wrong decision. I never made the
No,
right.
I don't
I never made the same mistake again.
What, you always were outside BP
Yeah.
afterwards?
Very much so. Yeah.
What a phone call to receive. I mean, they weren't particularly big. They weren't one of the largest designers. They didn't really even work for the royal family the way, you know, like a Norman Hartwell once the designer. So what an incredible opportunity. I think we'll see her in a moment.
I'm off my safety ground here, but they weren't necessarily big time, were they?
No, I think they had designed an evening gown that Princess Diana wore when she was younger.
Was the
just
Queen
to
Mum going in?
I think it was just to a family party, and she liked the gown, and so she called them up and said, "Can you make my wedding gown?" It's one of the biggest bridal trends right now, is that the big puff sleeves are back, and I wonder if Diana, way up in heaven, is shocked because she was not a huge fan of her gown. So I wonder if she's surprised to see these trends coming back again.
But you actually know that this was a moment in time, but Diana changed the face and the feel of the British monarchy.
Oh, absolutely, undeniably.
Without the young girl coming in with the confidence, the media, you know, the sort of stunningly attractive, and what she brought to the party changed the whole feel.
Yeah.
Diana's father, Earl Spencer, had suffered a very severe stroke 3 years before the wedding, and it had really affected his mobility, and you can see him there so determined to walk his daughter
Down the
aisle on
And
this
to be
day.
honest, she needed help because that 25-foot train, it's not going to be light, is it?
It's not.
And she's quite slight.
And the Archbishop of Canterbury, you can just see there, he had a brand new for this occasion, silver coat and mitre for this moment.
If you're ever going to get some new robes,
your new threads.
This is it,
Yes.
isn't it? You know?
Have you worn a tiara?
I can't say I have, but I've heard they're very heavy.
Right. I can't say I have either.
Those
walking
very,
behind.
very 80s
Very
dresses,
80s dress.
aren't they?
I had a bridesmaid dress later on in the 80s that was a peach version of those.
I'm so sorry.
And the the time, I thought it was wonderful, and I wanted to wear it to every party.
Oh, you did, didn't you? I think I saw you wear that last week. Please don't do that again.
And you know Charles probably the best out of all of us in the Royal Rat Pack. I mean, he is a very kind and an emotional man, and I think he was nervous, wasn't he, on the day of the wedding?
He was.
I mean, he knew all the pressure, but he really loved Diana.
Oh yeah, I mean that was. Look, I mean, I just have worked with that man for over 40 years now, and I kind of almost know what he's going to do next, you know. But he's a very compassionate man, and he's a very, you know, I mean, he's a really terrific guy. But I watched it as the marriage unravelled. I remember I was in India when you know, it was falling apart, the Taj Mahal, all that.
Yeah.
All those events I was there, but then I was there in the good days, you know, when they held hands and where they looked at each other with great love. So it was a long journey for me and for them. But
I mean, she must have been, it's all right for the king trying to take it in stride, but for a 20-year-old girl, you can't stress it enough. And then you think that life was, you know, she made such an impression.
Yes,
on
she
everyone.
she had to impress, she had to embrace her new role. It was sink or swim. And this is just, you can see her taking it all in. And she, part of her charm, sort of her down-to-earth nature, she is sort of nodding at everybody, saying hello, greeting people as she goes down the aisle.
The different feelings to those who were watching it then and just totally being drawn into this incredible fairy tale of this beautiful young woman and the future king and the life that they were about to begin together.
And now,
when you know when we watch it back in hindsight, there's a real sadness and poignancy there. But look, Charles sort of looking around slightly anxiously. I mean, this couple didn't really know each other all that well by the time they got married.
They'd met 13 times before they got married. They dated, quote unquote, because I mean, how much dating can you do?
Courted, I guess, did we call it?
Yeah,
then?
For 6 months before he proposed, and then Diana went on holiday where she was given time to think about it. I mean, are you gonna say no?
She wasn't, was she? Because she
was
very
in love,
much was in love and buying into the fairy tale. And you remember the agonising now engagement interview when you think about it, and when they were asked if they were in love, and Charles's response was whatever in love means.
Oh, dude.
And just Diana talking about that afterwards, how that made her feel at the time. Because we know that he was in love with Camilla.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think if that had been my husband to be, I might have slapped him.
But you've got a little bit more about you in terms of the confidence and this very naive, hopeful 20-year-old woman.
That's true.
I'm going to have to say something about the flowers, Arthur, as a florist.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an amazing bouquet of flowers, but it is that very traditional kind of, you know, long trailing. And I think every bride has Lily of the Valley in their wedding bouquet after the Queen, in honour of the Queen.
What do you think of that bouquet? Now that's quite good now.
It's quite a good one. It's, I mean, again, I can't, her arms must have been exhausted by the end of this. Everything looks so heavy.
She was only 20.
She's probably working out regularly. Lots of those Jane Fonda tapes.
Were they out then?
I would have thought so.
I never worked out to Jane Fonda tapes, so it's all right.
The one moment where we really got a glimpse of the nerves was where you hear them saying their vows to each other, and Diana's voice is just so quiet.
Yeah.
And then she got Charles's names the wrong way
Yeah,
round.
got them mixed up, didn't she?
Yeah, she called him Philip Charles.
Instead of Charles Philip.
And
maybe she was thinking of someone called Philip. I've just thrown a cat amongst the pigeons there.
his father?
Oh. Oh, Sarah. I've gone down a weird road there.
I think
How did we come
she
back?
was just totally overwhelmed in the moment.
It is, I mean, I'm sure you remember when you got married, and I remember all the times I've got married. That it,
I nearly spat out my mum's wrist.
I mean, it's like just like 5 times. No, but it's nerve-wracking. It's nerve-wracking, isn't it? It is when you're up there in front of all those people and you're trying to remember your husband's name.
And you're thinking, is the ring going to go on? Is it going to fit on?
Do I even want to marry this one?
Better not get the wrong name.
Exactly. Again, it's a lot. So yeah, it can be it's really nerve-wracking, isn't it? So you can understand.
When they get all the names the wrong way, I mean, but that shows the nerves. What did he, instead of Charles Philip or Philip Charles, I don't know, whichever way it was not, he got it wrong, and I even think Diana did something wrong in it.
I mean, I think you think about how enormous St. Paul's Cathedral was. They were very much aware of how many eyes were on them. It's being broadcast to the world. It must have been hugely nerve-wracking. And I imagine, to Diana's credit, I think she's incredibly uncomfortable in that enormous dress.
So, and there's the Queen Mum. Maybe she was sneaking
Looking
in for a quick
fabulous.
Dubonnet
I
and
think
bit of
she's
lemon.
looking for some gin, yes.
No, Dubonnet.
Dubonnet.
Do you know, are you aware of what Dubonnet is?
Yeah, is it?
Oh, good. It's a very Dubonnet and bitter lemon. That was her.
Yes,
That was
yeah.
her tipple, and lots of it. And,
And of course, the rings that they're exchanging here made of Welsh gold.
That's right, I remember that, yeah.
Which every royal bride has had a gold ring made from a special nugget of gold from Wales. Do we think any of the male bridegrooms, Princess Eugenie or Jack, who's married to Jack Brooksbank, or Princess Beatrice, who's married to Edo, do you think if they're wearing a wedding ring, the Queen, late Queen, would have given permission for them to have gold wedding rings?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think that was amazing that Charles asked the Queen if he could kiss, you know, if it was okay to kiss. A thing that would never happen now, would it? You know, they would just do that.
You just do it.
Yeah.
And the thing about, sorry to cut you,
No,
the thing
go.
about St Paul's Cathedral as well is that because it's so massive, obviously you have all the people that kind of will sit where the aisles are, and you can see Diana and Charles walking down the aisle, and then you've got all the people all round who can't
Haven't
see
seen
anything.
a thing. Because
see
that's the thing,
anything,
isn't it?
it's
In
so
these
massive.
big
Yeah.
weddings, 3,500 people.
I'm not sure if they had screens up like they
I
did.
don't know whether they would have done in
Yeah, so
81.
You could literally have been at the royal wedding and not seen a
go
thing.
home and watch it on TV.
And have a better view.
afterwards.
Yeah.
Apparently, they didn't kiss. Apparently, they kissed at BP on the balcony because he forgot to kiss her when they were exchanging their
No,
vows.
what people don't realise, he asked the Queen's permission to do it.
Oh, what? On the balcony?
On the balcony, he said it would be all right,
Would it be
and the
okay?
Queen said yes. And then
Because
he
was it the first time that ever happened?
ever happened, yeah. And there were photographers that missed it. I mean, there were people on the Queen Victoria Memorial that missed that picture. Unfortunately, our photographer got it, and I remember his byline, which I've
Erased from your memory.
It was another great picture from. I remember. Well, it was a great picture. You know, but as I say, you learn by your mistakes, don't you?
Walking out to the cheers of those enormous crowds. And look, this is one of my favourite images. Now, anyone, member of the royal family, on any kind of walkabout, any big event is faced with mobile phones in their faces.
Yeah.
1981, it was the periscope. And that is how everyone in the crowds was looking to see what was going on there.
I forgot periscopes even existed until you reminded me just now.
Did you ever have one? I never
Of course.
did. Did you?
Yeah. I used it to spy on my brother. Yeah, definitely. See over walls and stuff. It's brilliant.
Duke of York, my old school pal. Well, I was at school with him. And
The Queen and Duke of Edinburgh.
Right.
It's amazing. And I mean, being broadcast on this scale, this many cameras,
and
this
London
many
was
photographers.
pretty dingy then.
It
It hadn't had a
not
makeover.
quite as nice as it is now.
But what's worrying me there is it's not on the red carpet, it's on the steps. And I'm
Look,
sure
half
they've
of
been
it's all the
cleaned,
way
but I'm
over there,
thinking,
yeah. Oh, bridesmaid, she's on it. Well done, love.
yeah, don't get that dirty before they've had the official photographs
Imagine
taken.
you trip on it.
I ripped my
you?
dress, yeah. I got my heel
Deliberately?
caught in the back of it.
Oh no.
Pretty early on, actually.
Before you got married? Or?
No, I was married, and you could hide it in the photographs, but I remember thinking, typical.
But having said that, you know, it was. I remember it all so clearly. I can remember this day. I remember particularly Spike Milligan making the crowd laugh, cheering the crowd. I mean, it was just incredible day.
I mean, this wedding was the most expensive wedding on record at the time, £57 million.
I mean, it
cost to put this on.
looks like it, doesn't it?
It does.
When you-
And the two families look coming together. We've got
Yeah,
the Queen
lovely.
travelling in the carriage there with Diana's father.
Do you think he wanted to wave as well? I would. No, don't wave. Queen waves, you don't wave. But, you know, the cost of putting the barriers up, you know, having all the armed forces there, as well as things like the dress and the coaches and everything.
But these occasions for a country, for the government of the day, give a massive, massive boost, don't they?
For Brand Britain, I mean, it's incredible, and it's also about the power of soft diplomacy.
Grey and dingy.
You can't do that these days. I hear the River Thames is...
Oh no, but that's outside the...
Oh, is that the... Okay, then never mind. I thought it was people were waiting in the Thames.
But you see, clearly the palace has had a makeover since then.
Oh, it shines now. But look at how happy people are, dancing in the street.
And here it is. And, you know, it is so iconic and so famous, that image. And if you think about every key royal moment, I don't even know what this is, but are they in the river?
I think they're in the...
Oh, they're in the fountain.
In the fountain. Oh,
They're in
your
the
parents are going to be
fountains.
absolutely
Oh
fuming.
my goodness me. They're in the fountains to watch it.
Oh,
I mean,
dear.
that is brilliant. The crowd's cheering for
We
them.
want more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we want Charles, we want Di.
I think they want to die, not Charles.
But at that point, you know, this couple were
Everything.
You know, everything.
Yeah.
Look, there's a bit of activity. The Queen Mother peering out of the window on the balcony. Do you think she's coordinating them all?
She is.
There she is. She's coming out with Prince Andrew.
And Prince Edward,
Edward.
as well, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
And coming out to wave to the crowds. And Prince Philip there. All those Union flags being
Amazing.
waved. And it's amazing, really, isn't it? You know, I've covered so many of these events, just how close the public do manage to get.
Well, yes, and it's unusual actually, because the amount of security that surrounds the royal family on any given day.
Yes.
But when it comes to this occasion, you know, they're right up against the gates of Buckingham Palace,
Yeah.
and it's not that much. Oh, here they come! It's not that much of
Here
a
they are.
distance to this actual balcony.
And yes, the crowds that from St Paul's, you probably now in the times that we saw Meghan and Harry's wedding in Windsor, Westminster Abbey, this was a full-on state occasion.
Yes, this was an incredible event. I don't know that we'll see another wedding quite like it. That's so grand and
Well,
so
Andrew
important.
and Sarah Ferguson was quite punchy.
So when William and Kate got married, you were
When
absolutely there.
when Prince Andrew got married, I was there.
Edward and
I remember
Sophie.
doing a TV show, a Terry Wogan show, I think, a couple of days before Prince Andrew's wedding, and Terry Wogan said, "What's the picture one?" I said, "I've got to get the kiss." So I said, I mustn't miss the kiss. I said, I missed it the first time because it wasn't there. But this time I'm going to be there and there'll be no excuse.
Why is that such an iconic
Because
shot?
it's always the front page picture. I don't know why, because it's the moment that it seems that the marriage is sealed. And I mean, Andrew kissed Fergie. I mean,
Several times.
well, no, I used the whole roll of film doing it. I mean, that's how.
Keep his hands off
That's
her.
right. And no, this was a great day, and it was. Look at the crowds. I mean, they were huge, and everybody wished them well. I remember when, as they were leaving the palace to go on honeymoon, you know, the Queen running by the side of the carriage to wish them well.
Here they are, the doors are opening, look.
Oh, look.
Oh.
And they do look happy, don't they? Well, Diana looks happy. Charles is trying to smile.
Do you think they enjoy these balcony moments, or do you think they think, let's get this done and then we can kick the shoes off and have a glass of champagne?
Definitely. I think they're thinking that.
There they are, they're standing alongside each other, no kiss yet, waiting for the kiss.
And how do you think they just go like 1, 2, 3, and then they do it?
Well, yeah,
Or do they have a prompt?
Plan it? Do you have a nudge? What do you do? I don't know.
Because you don't want to
They
go in
haven't-
for it, and then your husband doesn't go in for it, and you look like a wally just trying to kiss.
Are they
there.
going in and they haven't kissed?
No.
And the bridesmaids and pages are heading in as
So do
well?
they go in and then they come back
I think
out?
they come back out.
Right.
It's like an encore.
Just about to say that.
Now I imagine there's a kiss here.
I believe there is. This is sort of historically the first royal kiss at a royal wedding. We obviously will see a few more, but This was such an amazing moment. The crowds go wild. Like you said, this was still a conservative time for the royal family, so public kissing.
No,
It's quite daring.
No public displays of emotion.
No PDAs. No,
Yeah.
there was none of this hand holding in public nonsense.
Oh, there's the kiss.
There we go.
From afar.
We got
That
it.
was the moment.
I think they must have counted down for that because that was very well coordinated.
Yeah, you wouldn't want to miss,
Exactly.
would you? When you know that everybody is waiting for that
Don't
moment,
leave
and
me
that is
hanging.
going to be the front page of all of the newspapers the next day.
Yeah.
Oh, there it was. That iconic kiss.
Well, blink and you miss. But, you know, they did it.
And it
but
was-
it's still, the crowd would have loved it.
Just
but
absolutely
you
went
just see
wild.
the slightly drab look of England and Buckingham Palace then. Britain was not a...
It was a
we
different
were
time.
we were in a, not in a great place, but this wedding definitely changed the dynamic.
This was a great wedding. This was a huge moment. Do you remember it, or do you not remember it? And that's how good it was.
Well, I was 20. Of course, I did. I had to be very responsible and make sure I behaved myself. But I think we were always celebrating the fact that it was, you know, if you're in the army at the time, you know that, you know, he is your commander in chief technically.
I think
So you sort of knew, and as a member of the Queen being, you know, the household division, we sort of knew that it was a big moment.
And we know how miserable she was, and how lonely and isolated she felt within the royal family. And the fact is that she was not Charles's true love.
Yeah. And that's a real shame.
But there you got the Queen Mum, and she, you know, think what she'd been through, and when, you know,
Yes.
her daughter's wedding, her own wedding, back in the 30s. I mean, and back in the 20s, and here she is back on the balcony again. Again, she lived to 100. I don't know what.
past 100, yeah. And she was always popular. Never had a day where her popularity sank. The British people just always loved her.
And she set high standards.
Oh, she was very sharp, and she did have a bit of fun. Another time, she had her hair cut very short. And I said to her, you know, if you get that cut much shorter, we'd think you're Sinead O'Connor. She said, at least I've got some hair, Arthur. Oh yeah, she could be, she was very fast with her jokes, but those 17 years, it was sad. And the day she was killed, I mean, I cried when I was outside the hospital when the coffin came out, I was in tears. I mean, she was just, and even on the day of the funeral, I'll never forget that either, you know, just the horses just coming past Westminster, the horses' hooves, and the quiet of the crowd, and just all you could hear was people sobbing, not crying, sobbing, and I'll never forget that day either. So, you know, from the beginning to the end.
Well, exactly.
She was an amazing person, and even to this day, you know, every year people turn up at Kensington Palace with flowers on the anniversary of her death. Amazing woman.
She's still beloved, isn't she?
Oh yeah, I still think so. And I can never think of her. I never think of her without thinking, you know, she made a difference to so many people's lives, including mine.
I'm watching it, and it's just so spectacular, and this moment in history. But knowing what we know now, and that fairy tale that just disintegrated in such a public and devastating way.
And over a real
feel so
period
sad.
of time, didn't it? And it almost feels like it was awful for longer than it was nice, you know?
Yeah.
Because that was such a beautiful wedding, a beautiful moment. And it felt so hopeful. And I think the nation felt really hopeful in that year. It was the start of sort of a glamorous time for the royal family. This young, glamorous, gorgeous couple. And unfortunately, it just didn't pan out like that.
Yes, and that's what's really important here, is that it is the future king, the now reigning king.
And who'd have thought in 1981 he wouldn't become king until 2022? I mean, that wouldn't have...
And they had no idea what lay ahead of them. I think that's why this is so special, is that they were happy, and this was just a happy day. it was a happy wedding and that they didn't know everything that was going to come.
I remember we had a very good party in the officers' mess.
And everywhere we went, this crowds were huge, you know, so, I mean, she became the face of the royal family, I'm afraid, for that while. But she did change things. I remember when we went to a leper colony in Nigeria, sitting on the bed holding the hands of the leper with his fingers missing and looking into his eyes. I remember when we went to Harlem, where she had the HIV babies, cuddling them in her arms. She went to an HIV hospital in Middlesex Hospital in London and sat with the patients, and she was phenomenal, and she was embracing them. And I mean, she really, Diana, I mean, she took the stigma out of HIV, she in this country certainly. And in later, even after she divorced Charles, this landmine campaign, I mean, Angola was a lawless country. And yes, she went there and I know the landmines, and you know, amazing. And I mean,
She knew the power of a good picture, didn't she?
She knew the power of her position, that she could get the publicity for it. And so many countries signed up to ban landmines after that.
They did, and that was down to her.
So, how do you feel? Is that the first time you've watched it like that? No.
Oh, no.
You said your mum's made you sit and watch it many times. Yeah, I think I've seen clips of it before, but never actually sat and watched that full spectacle.
It's just so iconic, isn't it? And it's such a piece of history, and it's, I mean, just so 80s, it's so of its time. Diana's dress is just so incredible. I love seeing that over again. I don't think, and don't tell my mum this, but I literally never get tired of watching that.
When you look at that, you think, well, that great day, so much happened. There were good bits, but ultimately it became a bit of a tragedy, the whole thing. But Diana definitely has left her imprint on where the royal family is hugely. Whether she knew it or didn't know it, she just made a difference. And this day has transformed the look and feel of the royal family. And the Diana effect is still so hugely felt across the board.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this was a shining day, and it led into a really golden era for several years for Charles and Diana, until the unraveling, the great tragedy. And then we saw a second golden era with William and Kate, with Harry and Meghan, and we're seeing sort of a second mini unraveling. But it's amazing how these weddings can really spark the most amount of joy.
As an outsider, looking in, and you've seen, we've had a chance to watch weddings. Is the royal family in a good place?
I mean, presently, I think that they are. Maybe not the best place that they've ever been, but at least Buckingham Palace has had a power wash.
I said a bit more, but now it needs some new wiring. But anyway, that's another story. Christine, happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
I may not be around for many more royal weddings once we get to Archie and all the others and George,
well,
but
it's
if we are...
What will George's wedding look like? What will Archie's wedding look like?
Well,
how many times will they kiss on that balcony? Will we be up to 3, 4?
By then, God knows what it could be. It could be a giant kiss-a-thon by the time that would come around. But I may not be around to see it, but I've loved spending Christmas with you. Thank you. Happy Christmas.
Happy Christmas.
And they may not have had the fairy tale ending, but wow, they started in style, didn't they?
They did, didn't they? Cheers to them.
Cheers.
We've come to the end of that. Actually, Arthur, I've never seen it before, and it was so lovely watching with you and getting all your memories. So I'm going to say Merry Christmas and cheers.
Merry Christmas.
Rupert, as it's Christmas, I have a little treat for us.
Oh, have I got to put it on?
Yes,
Okay.
of course you do.
Oh, it's a bit of a tight squeeze. Oh, it's been a long day. I've stuffed the turkey. I've eaten the Christmas pudding that you didn't want to eat. And I've had plenty of this. Do you mind if I have a kip?
I think you've earned it.
Good, because all the grandfather, the uncle in the corner, seen the Queen's speech, watched a few weddings. It's time for a very good nap, and this sofa's quite comfortable. Night all.
Thank you so much for joining us for our trip into the Royal Wedding Archives. Wishing you, wherever you are, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.